The black Range Rover swerved between two speeding trucks, tires screaming against wet asphalt, as a woman's hands gripped the wheel with terrifying calm. Behind her, Damian Cole was shouting, gripping his seatbelt, certain he was about to die. A cargo truck had lost its brakes and was hurtling straight toward them on a narrow bridge with no room to escape. In 3 seconds, Amora Okoye would either save both their lives, or end them. She exhaled once, spun the wheel hard, and the car shot through a gap no wider than a coffin. Metal screeched past the mirror. The truck roared by, missing them by inches. Silence. Damian sat frozen, chest heaving, staring at the woman he had laughed at just 3 weeks earlier, the woman he swore would never survive a single week behind his wheel. Now she had just saved his life. Welcome to African Mystery Stories. If you're new here, kindly like, subscribe, and comment. And stay with us through this story. 3 weeks before that breach, before the screaming tires and the truck that nearly ended everything, Amora Okoye was just another woman the world had already decided not to believe in. She sat in the driver's seat of an old, borrowed sedan, hands steady on the wheel, eyes locked forward, while an examiner beside her scribbled notes he'd clearly already made up his mind about. Outside the car, 3 men leaned against a fence, laughing. A woman driving through Crestview traffic, one of them sneered. She'll crash before she reaches the roundabout. Amora said nothing. She merged into the chaos of downtown traffic, horns blaring, motorbikes weaving, a delivery van cutting her off without warning, and she handled every second of it without flinching. When a motorcyclist swerved into her lane, she braked with precision, checked her mirror, and continued as if nothing had happened. By the time she parked the car back at the test center, even the examiner's pen had stopped moving. You passed, he muttered, yes, almost annoyed that he had to say it. The 3 men were no longer laughing. That evening, Amora walked home through the narrow streets of her neighborhood, past fruit sellers packing up their stalls and children chasing a half-deflated football. Her home was small, 2 rooms, a tin roof that leaked when the rains grew heavy, and a mother who greeted her at the door with tired, loving eyes. "You're late," Mrs. Okoye said, though there was no anger in it, only worry. "I passed the test, Mama," Amora said, and for a moment, exhaustion melted into a smile. Her mother pulled her into a hug. "I never doubted you. Not for 1 second." Inside, her 2 younger siblings were bent over a single textbook, sharing the light of one dim bulb. Amora looked at them and felt the weight she carried every single day, the weight of being the one who had to make it work, the one who had to find work, real work, work that paid enough to keep the lights on and the school fees paid. "Any luck with the job?" her mother asked gently, already knowing the answer. Amora shook her head. 3 more chauffeur agencies rejected me today. They said clients want men. They said a woman behind the wheel makes people nervous. "Then we'll find one who isn't afraid," her mother said. "Have patience, my daughter. The right door will open." The right door came knocking 2 days later, in the form of an old gentleman named Mr. Benson. He found Amora outside a garage where she sometimes helped repair minor engine troubles for extra cash, her hands stained with oil, her sleeves rolled to the elbow. "You're the one they call the fearless driver," he said, studying her with sharp, appraising eyes. Amora wiped her hands on a rag. "I don't know about fearless, sir. I just don't panic." Mr. Benson smiled. "That's exactly what I need. I head the household staff of Damian Cole." Amora's eyebrows lifted. Everyone in Crestview knew that name. Damian Cole, the billionaire who had built an empire out of shipping and logistics before he turned 35, a man whose face appeared on business magazines more often than his voice appeared in interviews. Cold. Brilliant. Untouchable. "He needs a personal chauffeur," Mr. Benson continued. "The last one quit after Mr. Cole nearly fired him for being 5 minutes late twice in 1 month. I've seen you drive, Amora. You're the best I've seen in 20 years. I want to recommend you." Amora almost laughed. Sir, a billionaire like Damian Cole will never hire a woman as his chauffeur. Maybe not, Mr. Benson admitted. But wouldn't you rather be rejected trying, than rejected sitting at home? That question followed Amara all the way home, echoing louder than every doubt her neighbors had ever thrown at her. That night, as she lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling, she made her decision. The next morning, dressed in the only formal blazer she owned, pressed twice to hide the fraying seams, Amara stood outside the towering glass gates of the Cole estate. Uncle Peter, the family's ever-cheerful neighbor, had walked her halfway there, refusing to let her face the morning alone. Chin up, he told her. Billionaires are just men with bigger houses and smaller patience. You'll be fine. Amara laughed despite her nerves. I hope you're right. Inside, the estate was almost obscenely beautiful, marble floors that gleamed like still water, a curved staircase, chandeliers that scattered light like scattered stars. Amara felt impossibly small standing in the foyer, waiting to be summoned. When she was finally led into Damian Cole's office, he didn't even look up from his laptop at first. Sit, he said flatly. She sat. When he finally raised his eyes and saw her, a woman, dressed modestly, hands folded politely in her lap, his expression shifted from mild disinterest to open disbelief. This is a joke, Damian said, turning to Mr. Benson, who stood quietly by the door. You brought me a woman. With respect, sir, Mr. Benson said calmly, she is the most skilled driver I have seen in 2 decades. Damian's laugh was short, sharp, humorless. Skilled or not, I need someone who can handle high-speed routes, hostile traffic, and unpredictable emergencies. Not someone who's going to scream at the first pothole. Amara felt heat rise to her face, but she kept her voice level. With respect, Mr. Cole, you haven't seen me drive yet. You're judging a book by a cover you haven't even opened. The room went silent. Mr. Benson's eyebrows shot up. Damian stared at her, stunned that anyone, let alone a job applicant, would speak to him with such quiet defiance. Bold words, Damian said slowly, for someone begging for a job. I'm not begging, Amara replied. I'm applying. There's a difference. Something flickered behind Damian's eyes, irritation, yes, but something else too. Curiosity, perhaps. He leaned back in his chair, studying her the way one studies an unexpected variable in an equation that was supposed to be simple. Fine, he said finally. One trial run. If you make a single mistake, I never want to see your face in this house again. I won't need a second chance, Amara said. 2 days later, the trial began, and it began badly, not because of Amara, but because Damian seemed determined to make her fail. He chose the worst route through the city, narrow alleys, a bridge under construction, and rush hour traffic thick enough to strangle patience out of the commerce driver. He sat in the back seat, arms crossed, phone in hand, waiting for her to falter. She didn't. When a motorbike swerved dangerously close, she adjusted smoothly. When a pushcart vendor spilled his goods across the road ahead, she braked with such precision that Damian's coffee didn't even spill in its cup holder. And then, just as they approached the final stretch, a delivery truck reversed blindly out of a side street directly into their path. Amara didn't scream. She didn't panic. She calculated the gap in a heartbeat, swerved onto the narrow shoulder, and brought the car to a smooth, controlled stop inches from disaster. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You could have hit that truck, Damian finally said, his voice tighter than he intended. I could have, Amara agreed. But I didn't. Damian said nothing else for the rest of the ride. But that evening, when Mr. Benson asked how the trial went, Damian only said, she stays. For now. The weeks that followed were not easy. The household staff whispered behind Amara's back, placing quiet bets on how long she would last. The head housekeeper barely acknowledged her. Even the gardener seemed to find her presence amusing, smirking whenever she walked past in her crisp black uniform. Amora ignored all of it. She arrived every morning before sunrise, polished the car until it gleamed, memorized every possible route to Damian's frequent destinations, and never, not once, gave him a reason to complain. Damian, for his part, remained distant. Cold greetings. Curt instructions. He rarely looked at her directly, as if acknowledging her competence would somehow validate a mistake he refused to admit making. But competence has a way of quietly dismantling prejudice, one flawless day at a time. One afternoon, as they drove along a quiet countryside road toward one of Damian's business retreats, Amora noticed an elderly man slumped against a broken-down motorcycle on the roadside, clutching his chest. Without hesitation, she pulled over. "What are you doing?" Damian snapped. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. "That man needs help," Amora said, already stepping out of the car. She knelt beside the stranger, checked his pulse, and calmly instructed him to breathe slowly while she called for an ambulance. She stayed with him, speaking gently, holding his trembling hand, until the paramedics arrived 12 minutes later. Damian watched the entire scene from the car window, his irritation slowly melting into something unfamiliar, quiet, reluctant admiration. When Amora finally returned to the driver's seat, breathless and apologetic, Damian surprised her. "You're 23 minutes late for my meeting," he said. Then, after a pause, "Was he all right?" "He'll be fine," Amora said. "Thank you for waiting." "I didn't wait for him," Damian said quietly, looking out the window. "I waited to see what kind of person you really are." From that day forward, something between them began to shift.
Still on schedule?
Damian started trusting her with more than routine errands, confidential business trips, private schedules, even sensitive documents left carelessly on the back seat that Amora never once looked at, though the temptation to satisfy simple curiosity must have crossed her mind. Their conversations, once frosty and transactional, grew warmer. "You graduated top of your class," Damian said one evening, glancing at her file Mr. Benson had left on his desk. "Why chauffeur work?" "Because it pays, and because I'm good at it," Amora said simply. Not every dream has to look glamorous to be worth chasing. Damian studied her reflection in the rearview mirror. "Most people in your position would have given up by now." "Most people haven't had my mother," Amora said, a small smile touching her lips. "She taught me that dignity isn't something anyone can hand you or take away. You either have it, or you don't." Damian said nothing, but something in his chest tightened, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a very long time. It was around this time that Vanessa had begun to notice the change. Vanessa, Damian's elegant fiancée, had built her entire identity around appearances, the right parties, the right photographs, the right fiancé whose success reflected favorably on her own image. She noticed the way Damian's mood shifted when Amora was mentioned. She noticed the way her calls to Damian went unanswered more often now, replaced by texts that felt increasingly distant. "Who is this chauffeur everyone's suddenly talking about?" Vanessa asked one evening, swirling wine in her glass with feigned casualness. "She's good at her job," Damian said simply. "That's not what I heard," Vanessa replied coolly. "I heard she's the reason you canceled dinner with my parents last week." "I had a business emergency." "Did you?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "Or did your chauffeur simply become more interesting than your fiancé?" Damian didn't answer, and his silence said more than words ever could. The rumor spread quickly after that, through the household staff, through Damian's business circle, through Vanessa's carefully curated social gatherings. Whispers followed Amora wherever she went. Some staff members grew colder. Others watched her with pitying, knowing glances, certain her fall from grace was only a matter of time. Amora held her head high through all of it, though the weight of judgment pressed heavier with each passing day. The confrontation, when it finally came, was public and humiliating. Vanessa arrived unannounced at the estate, storming into the garage where Amora was polishing the car's mirrors. Her voice carried sharp and loud enough for the entire household staff to hear. "I know what you're doing," Vanessa said, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "Worming your way into his life, acting so perfect, so humble, so trustworthy. You think I don't see it?" Amara set down her cloth slowly, her voice steady despite the sting of the accusation. "I don't know what you think you see, Miss Hart, but I've done nothing but my job." "Your job?" Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Your job is to drive the car, not to steal his attention. Do you think a man like Damian Cole would ever seriously consider someone like you?" The words landed like a slap, but Amara refused to let them show on her face. "I've never asked him to consider me for anything beyond my work. If he's spoken kindly to me, that's a reflection of his character, not some scheme of mine." "We'll see about that," Vanessa snapped, before storming into the house, straight toward Damian's office. What followed was a confrontation that would change everything. "Fire her," Vanessa demanded, slamming her palms against Damian's desk. "Today. Now. I won't have my fiancé's household gossiping about some driver he's clearly infatuated with." Damian's jaw tightened. "Amara has done nothing wrong. She's turned this entire house against me." "No," Damian said, his voice rising for the first time in the conversation, "you've turned yourself against a woman who has done nothing but exceptional work since the day she arrived. I won't fire someone for the crime of being competent and kind." Vanessa stared at him, stunned by the conviction in his voice. "You're defending her. Over me." "I'm defending what's right," Damian said quietly. "Something you clearly can't understand." The words hung heavy in the room. Vanessa's eyes filled with furious tears, but beneath the fury was something closer to fear, the fear of a woman who suddenly understood she was losing something she had taken entirely for granted. She left without another word, but the confrontation had cracked something open in Damian that could not be closed again. That night, alone in his office, Damian sat staring out at the city lights, turning something heavy over in his mind. He thought of Vanessa, beautiful, poised, and utterly hollow in every conversation that mattered. He thought of Amara, humble, fierce, unshakable, a woman who had never once tried to impress him and had somehow impressed him more than anyone in years. He realized, with quiet devastation, that his engagement had been emotionally over long before Amara ever arrived. He had simply been too comfortable, too distracted by appearances, to notice the emptiness until someone real walked into his life and exposed it. 2 days later, Damian ended his engagement with Vanessa. The conversation was brief, respectful, and final. "You deserve someone who admires the image you present," Damian told her gently. "But I need someone who challenges me to become better. That's never been you, and if I'm honest, it never really was." Vanessa left in silence, her pride wounded far deeper than her heart. That same evening, Damian found Amara in the garage, finishing her final checks on the car before heading home. His heart pounded in a way it hadn't in years. "Amara," he said, his voice unusually uncertain. "Can we talk?" She turned, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Of course, sir." "Not as your employer," Damian said. "As someone who needs to say something honest." Amara set the cloth down slowly, sensing the shift in his tone. "I ended things with Vanessa," Damian continued. "Not because of you, but because of what you helped me see. I've spent months watching you handle every challenge with more grace and integrity than anyone I've ever known. And somewhere along the way, my admiration became something I can no longer ignore." Amara's heart pounded, but her expression remained composed. "Mr. Cole, Damian," he corrected softly. "Damian," she said carefully, "I won't deny that I've felt something too. But I refuse to let people say I climbed my way into your life through manipulation. My reputation, my self-respect, they matter more to me than any relationship, no matter how much my heart might want otherwise." Damian nodded slowly, understanding settling into something deeper than disappointment. "Then we'll wait." however long it takes. You do that? Amora asked, surprised. I've learned patience is the price of anything worth having, Damian said. And you, Amora Okoye, are absolutely worth having. They agreed, that night, to continue as employer and employee, nothing more, nothing rushed, allowing time to heal what gossip and jealousy had tried to destroy. Then came the day on the bridge. 3 weeks into their quiet understanding, Damian and Amora were returning from an emergency business meeting when the skies opened into a sudden storm. Rain lashed against the windshield as they crossed the old bridge connecting Crestview's business district to the estate. Without warning, a massive cargo truck appeared ahead, brakes screeching uselessly against the wet road, sliding directly into their lane. Amora! Damian shouted. She didn't panic. Years of discipline, precision, and quiet courage converged into a single, decisive moment. She spun the wheel hard, threading the car through a gap between the truck and the bridge railing that should have been impossible to clear. Metal screamed past the mirror. The truck thundered by, missing them by mere inches, before crashing into the railing further down the bridge. Amora brought the car to a controlled stop, hands trembling now that the danger had passed. Damian sat frozen in the back seat, staring at the woman who had, once again, saved his life, the same woman he had laughed at, doubted, and dismissed the very first day they met. You saved us, Damian breathed, disbelief and gratitude warring in his voice.
Thank you.
That's the job, Amora said quietly, though her hands were shaking against the wheel. Damian reached forward, gently placing his hand over hers. No, he said. That's who you are. Months passed after that harrowing night on the bridge. The rumors that once trailed Amora through the estate slowly faded, replaced by quiet respect from staff who had once doubted her. Mr. Benson beamed with pride every time her name was mentioned. Even the household staff who had gossiped the loudest now greeted her with genuine warmth. Amora had become, without question, one of the most respected chauffeurs in all of Crestview, sought after, admired, her name spoken with the kind of reverence once reserved only for men in her profession. Damian, true to his word, never rushed her. He respected the boundary she had drawn, allowing trust and time to do what impatience never could. And slowly, naturally, without scandal or shame, something beautiful bloomed between them, not built on wealth, not built on power, but built on the quiet, unshakable foundation of mutual respect. One golden evening, as the sun dipped low over Crestview skyline, Damian sat in the back seat while Amora drove them home along the same road where they had first met, the road where laughter had once mocked her, and where respect had eventually silenced every doubt. Do you remember the first day? Damian asked, watching her in the mirror. When I laughed at the idea of a female chauffeur. Amora smiled, eyes on the road ahead. I remember. I also remember promising myself I'd prove you wrong. You didn't just prove me wrong, Damian said softly. You changed everything I thought I knew about strength, dignity, and what it means to earn something honestly. Amora glanced at him briefly through the mirror, her smile widening. Then I guess we're both exactly where we are supposed to be. As the car glided smoothly through the golden streets of Crestview, past the same doubters who once laughed, past the same obstacles that once seemed impossible, Amora Okoye drove forward, not as a billionaire's chauffeur, and not merely as the woman he loved, but as living proof that respect, integrity, and quiet perseverance can break even the strongest barriers ever built. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away without hitting like, subscribing, and dropping a comment below telling us your favorite part. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that hard work and dignity always win in the end. See you in the next story.